What would you do if the perfect life you built, the man you adored, and the child growing inside you were all part of an elaborate, cruel deception? For Amelia Vance, her world was a sun-drenched penthouse, her husband's loving arms, and the gentle kicks of their unborn daughter. But a serpent had crept into her paradise, wearing the face of a friend and whispering poison into her husband's ear. This isn't just a story of infidelity. This is a story of a masterful takeover, a psychological war waged against a pregnant woman and the one man, a billionaire godfather with eyes that missed nothing, who saw the truth hidden behind a flawless smile. Stay with me as we unravel the shocking saga of how a mistress took a pregnant wife's place and the earth-shattering secret that brought an entire empire to its knees. Amelia Vance traced the rim of her porcelain teacup, the delicate scent of chamomile and lavender filling the air of their Upper East Side penthouse. Outside, the midday sun glinted off the steel canyons of Manhattan, but inside her world was serene, meticulously curated and shimmering with love. At 7 months pregnant, she felt a profound sense of contentment that was as vast and deep as the city skyline stretched before her. Her husband, Ethan Vance, was the architect of this beautiful life. Heir to the sterling Vance real estate empire, he was charming, ambitious, and to Amelia utterly devoted. They had met in a whirlwind romance that felt like a modern fairy tale, the humble art curator swept off her feet by the dashing real estate mogul. He hadn't cared about her simple background. He'd said he cared about her spirit, her kindness, her eye for beauty. Now they were expecting their first child, a daughter they planned to name Lily. "You're glowing," Ethan said, entering the living room. He was already dressed in a sharp Tom Ford suit, his tie a perfect silver knot. He leaned down and kissed her forehead, his hand resting gently on her swollen belly. "Lily and her mom are the most beautiful things in my world." Amelia smiled, her heart swelling. "Don't be late tonight. Chloe is coming over to help me finalize the plans for the baby shower. Wouldn't miss it for the world," he promised, his blue eyes sincere. But as he kissed her goodbye, his phone buzzed on the marble countertop. The screen lit up with the name Isabella. "New project manager," Ethan said quickly, tucking the phone into his pocket before Amelia could get a proper look. Incredibly efficient. A real shark. Dad would have loved her drive. Amelia thought nothing of it. Ethan's world was filled with ambitious people. She trusted him completely. Their life was a fortress of mutual respect and adoration. Or so she believed. The first crack in the fortress appeared a week later. Ethan started coming home later, smelling faintly of a perfume that wasn't hers. A heady, exotic scent of jasmine and sandalwood. He'd blame it on late-night meetings, client dinners, the unavoidable pressures of a multi-billion-dollar company. He bought her extravagant gifts to assuage his guilt, a Cartier bracelet, a first-edition book she'd been searching for. Each gift felt less like a token of love and more like a beautifully wrapped apology for an unnamed crime. One evening as he slept, his phone buzzed incessantly. It was on his nightstand, screen down. A wave of nausea sharper than any morning sickness she'd experienced washed over Amelia. Her hands trembled as she reached for it. It was against everything she believed, in a violation of the trust that was the bedrock of their marriage. But a primal instinct, a mother's need to protect her nest, overrode her conscience. She lifted the phone. Dozens of messages, all from Isabella. "Isabella. Still thinking about last night. You were incredible." "Isabella. She has no idea, does she? Poor thing. Isabella. I can't wait until it's me in that penthouse with you. Isabella. Just a little longer. Stick to the plan. The words blurred as tears filled Amelia's eyes. The plan. It wasn't just a sordid affair. It was something calculated. Cold. The air was sucked from her lungs. The baby inside her gave a sudden sharp kick, as if sensing her mother's distress. Her perfect world, her gilded cage, had just shattered. She placed the phone back exactly as she'd found it, her mind racing. Confronting him now, armed with only a few texts, would be a mistake. He would lie, deny, and turn it around on her. No, she had to be smart. She was fighting for more than just her marriage now. She was fighting for her child's future. She needed to know who Isabella was. She needed to understand the plan, and as she lay back down next to the man, she now realized was a stranger. Amelia felt a cold, hard resolve crystallize in her heart. The fairy tale was over. The war had just begun. Amelia decided her baby shower would be the perfect hunting ground. Ethan had insisted on inviting his key team members, arguing it was good for morale and showed his commitment to a family-work balance. He framed it as a celebration of them, a way to include his professional life in their personal joy. Amelia, now armed with her terrible knowledge, knew better. It was an excuse to bring Isabella into their home, into her sanctuary. She agreed, her voice sweet as honey, while her mind was sharp as a shard of glass. The day of the shower arrived, a perfect sun-drenched Saturday. The penthouse was a vision of white roses and blush-pink balloons. Her best friend Chloe had outdone herself. Guests mingled, sipping champagne, sparkling cider for Amelia, their laughter echoing against the panoramic city views. Amelia, dressed in a flowing cream-colored dress that accentuated her maternal glow, played the part of the blissful mother-to-be flawlessly. But her eyes scanned the crowd, a hawk searching for its prey. And then she saw her. Isabella was even more stunning than Amelia had imagined. Tall and impossibly chic in a tailored crimson pantsuit with raven black hair cut in a severe, stylish bob, and eyes the color of dark chocolate. She moved with the predatory grace of a panther, a confident smile playing on her perfectly painted red lips. She wasn't just beautiful. She radiated a powerful magnetic energy that drew people to her. Amelia watched as she charmed Ethan's colleagues, laughing at the right moments, her hand lightly touching a senior partner's arm. Ethan brought her over his arm possessively around Isabella's waist for a fraction of a second too long. "Darling," he said to Amelia, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "This is Isabella Rossi, the project manager I was telling you about, the one who's been saving my life these past few months. It's an absolute honor to finally meet you." Amelia. "Isabella," purred her voice, a low, husky melody. She extended a hand, her nails immaculate. "Ethan talks about you constantly. You're even more radiant than he described." It was a perfectly delivered line, laced with just enough sincerity to seem genuine to the onlookers, but to Amelia it was a declaration of war. Isabella's eyes held a flicker of triumphant cruelty. Throughout the party, Isabella was a master of subtle psychological warfare. She attached herself to Amelia, feigning a deep interest in the pregnancy. "Oh, you must be so exhausted," she'd say, loud enough for others to hear. "I can't imagine juggling all this while feeling so delicate. You're a hero." She made Amelia sound fragile, incapable. Later, while Amelia was opening gifts, Isabella knelt beside her, ostensibly to help. As Amelia unwrapped a tiny pair of hand-knitted booties from her Aunt Isabella picked them up. "How quaint," she murmured, her voice dripping with condescension that only Amelia could detect. I was thinking of getting the baby something a little more practical. Perhaps some early learning stock options in a tech startup. She then turned to Ethan's mother, who was sitting nearby, and laughed. Got to start them on the path to success early, right? Eleanor Vance, a woman who valued lineage and power above all else, gave a thin, appreciative smile. Amelia felt a chill. Isabella wasn't just seducing her husband, she was infiltrating her family. The most calculated blow came near the end of the party. Amelia was standing by the dessert table, her back aching, when Isabella approached with 2 glasses. "I brought you some more sparkling cider," she said with a warm smile. As she handed the glass to Amelia, she stumbled, as if catching her heel on the expensive rug. A significant amount of the sticky liquid sloshed down the front of Amelia's cream dress, creating a large, ugly stain right over her belly. "Oh my God, Amelia, I am so dreadfully sorry." Isabella gasped, her performance of horrified clumsiness worthy of an Oscar. She began dabbing at the stain with a napkin, making it worse. "How could I be so clumsy? It's this dress. You know how it is." Ethan rushed over. "What happened?" "It was all my fault," Isabella said, her eyes welling with crocodile tears. "I ruined her beautiful dress. I'm just so sorry, Amelia." Amelia stood there, sticky and humiliated, as her husband comforted the other woman. "It's okay, Isabella." "It was an accident," Ethan said, patting her arm. He glanced at Amelia, a flicker of annoyance in his eyes. "It's just a dress, honey." But it wasn't just a dress. It was a power play. In front of all their friends, family and colleagues, Isabella had marked her territory, positioning herself as the victim and Amelia as a collateral, slightly pathetic inconvenience. That night, after the last guest had departed, Amelia stood in their bedroom, the stained dress pooled at her feet. "Isabella feels terrible," Ethan said, unbuttoning his shirt. "She's already sent a courier with a gift certificate for Bergdorf's to replace the dress." "How thoughtful of her," Amelia replied, her voice dangerously quiet. "She's just trying to fit in," Ethan continued, oblivious. "She really admires you, you know. She sees you as this serene domestic goddess. Everything she's not." The words were meant to be a compliment, but they landed like a punch. To Ethan, Amelia was the docile wife, the mother-to-be, the serene keeper of the home. Isabella was the shark, the dynamic force, his equal in the world outside these penthouse walls. He had neatly compartmentalized them, never imagining that the serene goddess was quietly sharpening her claws. Amelia looked at her reflection in the mirror. The stain on her dress was a map of her new reality. She was no longer just a wife. She was a combatant in a war she hadn't chosen against an enemy who had already seized critical ground. And she knew with chilling certainty that this serpent would not be content with just the garden. She wanted the entire kingdom. The weeks following the baby shower descended into a nightmare of meticulously orchestrated gaslighting. Isabella, having established her friendship with Amelia, intensified her campaign with Ethan as her willing or perhaps witless accomplice. Her goal was no longer just to replace Amelia, but to systematically dismantle her sanity, to make her appear unstable and unfit in the eyes of everyone who mattered. Isabella would call the penthouse under the guise of work, asking for Ethan, then engage Amelia in long, meandering conversations. She would plant tiny seeds of doubt. "Ethan seems so stressed lately," she'd sigh. "He mentioned he's worried about your anxiety. Please make sure you're taking care of yourself. The baby needs a calm, Mummy. She began to manipulate their physical space. One day, Amelia's antique silver locket, a gift from her late grandmother, vanished from its velvet box. She searched frantically, her heart pounding with a sense of violation. When she told Ethan, he exchanged a look with Isabella, who had dropped by with some documents. "Honey, are you sure you remember where you put it?" Ethan asked, his tone laced with a patronizing concern. "Dr. Evans did say pregnancy can cause baby brain. You've been a bit forgetful lately." "I'm not forgetful, Ethan. It was right here," Amelia insisted, her voice rising with panic. "Of course," Isabella interjected softly, placing a calming hand on Ethan's arm. "Why don't we all just look for it together?" "No need to get upset, Amelia. Stress is so bad for the baby." The next day, the locket reappeared on her nightstand, right where she had first looked. She felt a dizzying sense of confusion. Was she losing her mind? The true masterpiece of Isabella's cruelty was the nursery incident. Amelia had spent months designing the perfect nursery, a serene space of soft greys, yellows, and hand-painted watercolor animals on the walls. It was her sanctuary, a physical manifestation of her love for her unborn daughter. One afternoon, she walked into the nursery to find a gallon of dark grey paint spilled across the pristine white carpet and splattered up the wall, obliterating a family of giraffes she had painstakingly painted. The room reeked of turpentine. Amelia screamed. It was a raw, primal sound of anguish. Ethan and Isabella, who had just arrived home together from a meeting, rushed in. Isabella gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh, Amelia, what happened? I don't know," Amelia sobbed, collapsing against the doorframe. "I just walked in and found it like this." Ethan surveyed the damage, his face a mask of disappointment. "Amelia, the contractors finished in here last week. The paint cans were all taken away. Where did this even come from?" "I don't know," she cried, her mind reeling. Later that evening, after the cleaning crew had left, Ethan sat her down on the sofa. Isabella was there too, perched on an armchair, like a concerned family friend. "Isabella told me something." Ethan began, his voice heavy. "She said she saw you coming out of the storage closet on the service floor this morning, the one where the building keeps leftover maintenance supplies." Amelia stared at him dumbfounded. "What, I haven't been down there in months. She said you looked distracted, upset," Ethan pressed on. "Amelia, are you unhappy about the baby? Are you scared? Is this some kind of cry for help? Did you do this?" The accusation hung in the air, so monstrous, so utterly unbelievable, that Amelia couldn't breathe. She looked from her husband's accusing face to Isabella's, which was a perfect portrait of feigned sorrow and sympathy. Isabella had done this. She had snuck in, destroyed the nursery, and framed her. "You believe her over me," Amelia whispered, her voice cracking. "Ethan, look at me. She is lying. She is trying to destroy us." "Amelia, you're being hysterical," Ethan said, his voice hardening. "Isabella has been nothing but supportive. You've been erratic, emotional, paranoid. First the locket, now this. I think we need to call Dr. Evans. I'm worried about you. I'm worried about what you might do next." That was the moment Amelia's heart finally broke. It wasn't just the affair. It was this. He had allowed this viper to poison his mind so completely that he now saw his pregnant wife as a hysterical, unhinged threat. The fight that followed was apocalyptic. All of Amelia's pent-up fear, suspicion, and grief erupted. She screamed, she cried. She threw a vase of flowers against the wall, a desperate, futile act of rage that only served to prove their point. In the end, Ethan stood before her, his face cold and resolute. "I can't do this anymore, Amelia. I can't have this chaos around me, around the baby. It's not safe. I think you need to leave. Just for a while. Until you're feeling more like yourself." Isabella stood behind him, her expression one of deep, tragic regret. But as Ethan turned to console her, Amelia saw it a fleeting, triumphant smirk that twisted her lips for just a second. "Leave." Amelia choked out her hand protectively on her belly. "This is my home. This is our baby's home." "It's not a home anymore. It's a war zone," he said. "I'll have your things sent to your friend Chloe's. I'll take care of all your expenses. You won't have to worry about a thing. Just get help." He was casting her out. His pregnant wife. He was throwing her away, based on the lies of a woman he barely knew. As the reality of his betrayal settled in cold and heavy as a tombstone, Amelia stopped crying. An eerie calm washed over her. She walked to the bedroom, packed a single overnight bag, and didn't look back. As she waited for the elevator in the private hall, she could hear Isabella's soft, comforting voice cooing at Ethan from inside the apartment. The serpent hadn't just taken her husband. She had taken her home, her reputation, her entire life. She had won, for now. The fluorescent lights of Chloe's spare bedroom seemed to mock Amelia. For 3 days she had barely moved, a prisoner of grief adrift in a sea of betrayal. Chloe, a fiercely loyal friend and a pragmatic lawyer, had tried to rouse her into action, talking of divorce filings and asset division. But Amelia's spirit was shattered. She had lost not just her husband and her home, but her very sense of reality. They had made her believe she was crazy, and a part of her still wondered if they were right. On the 4th day, her phone rang. It was an unknown number, but the caller ID read Blackwood Industries. Her heart skipped a beat. Alistair Blackwood had been her late father-in-law's best friend and the co-founder of Sterling Vance. He was the silent, formidable partner who had stepped back from day-to-day operations years ago, but still held immense influence and a significant portion of the company. He was Ethan's godfather, a figure of immense power and quiet authority, who rarely intervened in family matters. She answered, her voice a hoarse whisper. "Hello." "Amelia." The voice on the other end was deep, resonant, and calm. It was a voice that commanded attention without ever needing to raise its volume. "It's Alistair Blackwood. I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Mr. Blackwood." "No, of course not." "I was sorry to hear about the disagreement between you and Ethan." He said, his choice of the word disagreement so understated it was almost clinical. "Ethan informed the board that you would be taking some time away to deal with personal health matters." Amelia's blood ran cold. He was already spinning the narrative painting her as unwell to his board of directors. "That's not what happened," she said, a spark of her old fire returning. There was a pause on the other end. "I didn't think so," Alistair said simply. "I knew Ethan's father, Robert, for 40 years. He was a brilliant man, but a terrible judge of character outside of a boardroom. I fear Ethan has inherited that particular trait. Robert also adored you, Amelia. He told me you were the best thing that ever happened to his son, that you had a steel spine beneath that gentle demeanor." Tears pricked Amelia's eyes. It was the first validation she'd had in months. "Amelia," Alistair's voice grew more serious, "I would like to meet with you. I have a car waiting downstairs for you. It will bring you to my office. No one will know." An hour later, Amelia was sitting in a plush leather chair opposite Alistair Blackwood. His office was not the sterile glass box of a modern CEO, but a warm, wood-panelled study filled with books, antique maps, and the faint scent of leather and old paper. Alistair himself was in his late 60s, with a mane of silver hair, piercing grey eyes, and the stillness of a man who is accustomed to observing far more than he speaks. He listened without interruption as Amelia recounted everything from the first suspicious text messages to the final soul-crushing accusation about the nursery. She left nothing out. Isabella's calculated charm, the gaslighting, the way she had systematically isolated Amelia and poisoned Ethan's mind. She expected disbelief or perhaps pity. Instead, she saw a flicker of something cold and dangerous in Alistair's eyes. When she finished, he leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "This Isabella Rossi," he said. "Ethan told me he hired her from our competitor Nexus Corp, where she had a stellar track record. I did a cursory check. Nexus Corp has no record of her ever working there." Amelia stared at him. "What? Her entire resume, the one Ethan was so impressed by, is a fabrication," Alistair continued. "Her university degrees, her previous positions, they are ghosts. It took my assistant less than an hour to discover discrepancies that a simple HR background check should have caught, which means she was never vetted. Ethan must have overridden protocol to hire her." The pieces began to click into place, forming a picture far more sinister than a simple affair. This wasn't a woman who fell in love with a married man. This was a professional predator. "I don't understand," Amelia whispered. "Why would she do all this? What does she want?" "She wants Sterling Vance," Alistair said, his voice grim. "Or rather, someone wants it, and she is their instrument. To get it, they need to control Ethan. And to control Ethan, they needed to remove you." He paused, his gaze intense. "You, Amelia, were not the obstacle. You were the firewall. Your love for him, your grounding influence. You kept him centered. With you gone, he is rudderless, suggestible, and completely in her thrall." Alistair stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the city. "When Robert and I built this company, we made a promise. We would build something that would last, something for our children. I will not stand by and watch a charlatan in a crimson pantsuit tear it down by seducing my godson and destroying his family." He turned back to face her, his expression resolute. "You are not crazy, Amelia. You are a victim of a sophisticated psychological attack, but you are also a Vance in spirit, if not yet in name, for your daughter. And the Vances do not break. They fight back." He gestured to a man standing discreetly by the door, a man Amelia hadn't even noticed. "This is David Hayes. He is the best private investigator in this city. From this moment on, he works for you. We are going to uncover every lie trace, every dollar, and expose Miss Rossi for exactly what she is. We will not just clear your name, Amelia. We will dismantle her." For the first time in weeks, Amelia felt not despair, but a surge of cold, righteous fury. The fog of confusion and self-doubt began to lift, replaced by a crystalline clarity. Alistair Blackwood hadn't just offered her a lifeline. He had handed her a sword, and she was ready to go to war. David Hayes was the antithesis of the gruff, trench-coated private investigators of fiction. He was a slight, impeccably dressed man in his 40s with a quiet demeanor and eyes that seemed to absorb every detail of his surroundings. He operated not with brute force, but with the surgical precision of a data surgeon. Under the infinite resources of Alistair Blackwood, he began to meticulously unspool Isabella Rossi's fabricated life. His first discovery was financial. Isabella had systematically been siphoning money from Ethan. It wasn't crude theft, but a sophisticated scheme. She had convinced Ethan to invest in a series of exclusive high-yield, offshore tech funds. The paperwork was flawless, the prospectuses glossy and convincing. In reality, they were shell corporations, intricate funnels that led directly to a series of anonymous bank accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. In 3 months, she had diverted over $15 million of Ethan's personal fortune. "She's not just bleeding him dry," David explained to Amelia and Alistair in a subsequent meeting, laying out a complex flowchart on the polished boardroom table. "She's liquidating his personal assets at an alarming rate. It's the kind of strategy you use when you have a very short timeline. She's planning a fast exit." While the financial trail was being mapped, David's team delved into Isabella's past. With no official records to go on, they started with the basics surveillance. A tracking device on her car and a surveillance team revealed her movements. She wasn't just spending her evenings with Ethan. 2 or 3 times a week, she would drive to a discreet luxury condo in Brooklyn, one not registered in her name. "We ran the condo's ownership," David said, his tone grim. "It belongs to a man named Julian Croft." Alistair Blackwood stiffened a flash of recognition in his eyes. "Croft," he said, his voice low. "Marcus Croft's son." Amelia looked between them. "Who is Marcus Croft?" "Marcus Croft was my partner before Robert Vance." Alistair explained, his face a grim mask. "We started this business together, but Marcus was reckless. He took dangerous risks, cut ethical corners. I bought him out and he never forgave me for it. He spent the rest of his life trying to build a rival firm, Nexus Corp, with the express purpose of destroying us. He died 2 years ago, a bitter, resentful man. His son Julian inherited both the company and the grudge." Suddenly it all made sense. Nexus Corp, the company Isabella had claimed to work for. It wasn't a random lie. It was a taunt. "Isabella isn't just a gold digger," Amelia said, the horror of the conspiracy dawning on her. "She's a corporate saboteur. She's working for Julian Croft." "Precisely," David confirmed. "She's the weapon. Croft is the man pulling the trigger. Their plan is twofold. First, bankrupt Ethan personally. Second, get him to make a series of disastrous business decisions that will tank Sterling Vance's stock price. Once the company is vulnerable, Nexus Corp, funded by Ethan's own stolen money, will initiate a hostile takeover." The sheer audacity and cruelty of the plan was breathtaking. They weren't just trying to ruin Ethan professionally. They were using his heart as a tool to orchestrate his own demise. The final piece of the puzzle, the one that would serve as the public executioner's blade, came from a deep dive into Isabella's personal communications. David's team managed to legally acquire records of her burner phones. They found a treasure trove of text messages and voice notes between her and Julian Croft. In them, Isabella gloated about her manipulation of Ethan. She called him her gilded puppy, mocking his adoration and gullibility. She detailed with chilling delight how she had staged the nursery incident, smuggling in the paint and turpentine in a designer tote bag, while Amelia was at a prenatal yoga class. He actually believed the pregnant cow would destroy her own baby's room. One of her voice notes sneered, followed by Julian Croft's cruel laughter. He's practically begging me to move in. He wants me to help him fix his life. But the most damning evidence was a video file attached to one of the messages. It was security footage from a bar dated 6 months before Isabella ever met Ethan. In it, she was sitting with Julian Croft, and they were studying a dossier. The camera zoomed in, and Amelia's face was clearly visible on the top page. It was a complete file on her background, her routines, her psychological profile, her weaknesses. Amelia felt sick. She had been targeted. This entire nightmare, every step of it had been planned with the cold, impersonal precision of a military operation. She wasn't just collateral damage. She was the primary target to be neutralized. Alistair Blackwood looked at the mountain of evidence, the financial statements, the surveillance photos of Isabella and Croft, the transcripts of their conversations, the damning video. His face was like granite. "We have everything we need," he said, his voice calm but lethal. "Now we choose our battlefield. This cannot be resolved in a courtroom a year from now. This needs to be settled with speed and finality. It's time to bring Ethan back into the fold, not with an argument, but with the cold, hard, irrefutable truth." He looked at Amelia, his grey eyes softening for a moment. "I am going to arrange a formal dinner at my estate. Ethan and Isabella will be the guests of honor. He believes it is to celebrate his newfound happiness. It will, in fact, be a tribunal." Alistair Blackwood's Long Island estate was a fortress of old money and quiet power. A long, winding driveway led to a magnificent stone manor surrounded by acres of manicured gardens. It was the kind of place where dynasties were made and broken. Ethan and Isabella arrived in Ethan's Bentley, looking every bit the power couple. He, in a bespoke tuxedo, looked happier and more relaxed than Amelia had seen him in months. Isabella was a vision in a shimmering, backless silver gown, dripping with diamonds that Amelia recognized as part of the Vance family collection pieces she herself had refused to wear, finding them too ostentatious. Seeing them on Isabella felt like another desecration. Amelia was already there, hidden away in an adjoining library, with David Hayes watching on a discreetly placed monitor. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her resolve was absolute. She was not the weeping, hysterical woman who had been cast out of her own home. She was a queen, waiting to reclaim her kingdom. Alistair greeted the couple in the grand foyer, his demeanor warm and avuncular. "Ethan, my boy, and this must be the brilliant Isabella. I have heard so much about you." "The pleasure is all mine, Mr. Blackwood," Isabella said, her voice smooth as silk. "Ethan holds you in the highest regard." They were led into the formal dining room, a cavernous space with a 20-foot ceiling, a roaring fireplace, and a long mahogany table set for 3. The atmosphere was intimate, yet overwhelmingly formal. They made it through the soup and the fish course with pleasantries. Alistair expertly steered the conversation, asking about Isabella's fictional career, praising Ethan's recent disastrous business moves, lulling them into a false sense of security. Ethan, eager for his godfather's approval, preened under the attention. Isabella was poised and charming, the perfect corporate consort. It was when the butler cleared the plates for the main course that Alistair made his move. "Ethan," he began, his tone shifting almost imperceptibly, becoming heavier, more serious. "Before we continue, there is a small business matter I'd like to discuss, a matter of due diligence." Ethan looked confused. "Of course, Alistair. What is it?" Alistair nodded to an unseen person, and a large screen descended from the ceiling on the far wall. "It concerns your new star project manager," he said, his eyes locking onto Isabella. Her smile faltered for the first time. The screen flickered to life. The first image was a side-by-side comparison of Isabella's resume and a list of confirmations. Nexus Corp, no record of employment. Stanford University, no record of attendance. Ethan stared, his brow furrowed. Alistair, what is this? Some kind of clerical error. There is no error, Alistair said calmly. The screen changed to a flowchart, the one David Hayes had prepared, showing $15 million flowing from Ethan's accounts into a web of offshore shells. This, however, is grand larceny. Ethan's face went pale. That's not possible. Those are my investments. Isabella vetted them. Oh, she vetted them all right, Alistair said, his voice dripping with ice. The screen changed again this time to a surveillance photo of Isabella kissing a man outside a Brooklyn condo. A man I'm sure you recognize, Ethan. Julian Croft. Ethan shot to his feet. Croft? What the hell is she doing with Julian Croft? Isabella's composure finally shattered. Ethan, this is insane. This is a trick Blackwood is trying to drive a wedge between us. Is he? Alistair's voice boomed in the silent room. Then perhaps you can explain this. The audio began to play. It was Isabella's voice, clear as a bell from the recovered voice notes. He actually believed the pregnant cow would destroy her own baby's room, followed by the sound of Julian Croft's cruel laughter. Ethan staggered back as if he'd been physically struck. He looked at Isabella, his eyes wide with horror and dawning comprehension. The color drained from her face, leaving a ghastly pallor beneath her perfect makeup. And finally, Alistair said, dealing the finishing stroke, the planning session. The video from the bar played on the screen. Isabella and Croft 6 months prior, studying the dossier on Amelia, planning every move. The systematic, cold-blooded destruction of a life laid bare in grainy security footage. The room was utterly silent, save for the crackling of the fire. Ethan was shaking his face, a mask of agony and self-loathing. He turned to Isabella, his voice a choked whisper. All of it was a lie. Isabella, cornered and exposed, dropped the facade entirely. The charming, sophisticated woman vanished, replaced by something venomous and feral. Lie! She spat, her voice hard and ugly. You pathetic fool. You made it so easy. You were so desperate for a shiny new toy to praise you that you threw away your own wife. The pregnant cow was smarter and stronger than you ever deserved. And you handed me your entire kingdom on a silver platter because I told you that you were a big, strong man. Her eyes blazed with contempt. Yes, we were going to take everything. And you know what? You deserve it. It was at that moment that the library doors opened. Amelia stepped out, poised and regal, her hand resting on her belly. She was no longer a victim. She was the judge. Ethan saw her, and a terrible guttural sob escaped his lips. He stumbled towards her, his hands outstretched. Amelia. God, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I was a fool. Amelia held up a hand, stopping him in his tracks. Her eyes were not filled with hate, but with a profound, sorrowful finality. The time for sorry is over, Ethan, she said, her voice steady and clear. You didn't just have an affair. You let her wage a war against me, against our child in our own home. You chose to believe the lies because it was easier than facing the truth. You broke my trust. But you will not break me. Alistair Blackwood stood up, his presence dominating the room. Isabella Rossi, or whatever your real name is, he said calmly. Mr. Chen has already forwarded this entire file to the District Attorney's Office and the SEC. You will be facing federal charges for fraud, conspiracy, and embezzlement. As for you, Julian, he said, speaking as if Croft were in the room, the war your father started is now over, and you have lost. 2 discreet security men entered the room and stood on either side of Isabella. Her fight was gone, replaced by the cold, stark terror of utter defeat. Her silver gown now looked like a cheap costume, her diamonds like glass. The serpent had been defanged, exposed, and was about to be caged. The aftermath was not a story of joyful reunion, but one of quiet, painful reconstruction. Isabella Rossi and Julian Croft were arrested the next day. The scandal that erupted was immense, shaking the foundations of New York's real estate world. The story of the corporate conspiracy, the ruthless Mistress, and the billionaire Godfather's intervention became the stuff of legend. But for Amelia, the headlines were just noise. Her world was focused on the new life she was about to bring into the world. Ethan, shattered and publicly humiliated, tried desperately to win her back. He sent endless bouquets of flowers, wrote long, rambling letters filled with self-flagellation and pleas for forgiveness. He liquidated the accounts Isabella hadn't managed to drain, and put the money in a trust for their unborn daughter, an act of penance that felt both monumental and insignificant. He begged to be in the delivery room. Amelia, after much soul-searching and a long conversation with Alistair, agreed, not for Ethan and not for the memory of their marriage, but for Lily. She wanted her daughter to know that on the day she was born, both her parents were there united, if only for that moment in their love for her. Lily. Amelia Vance was born on a crisp autumn morning, healthy and beautiful, with her mother's calm eyes and a shock of dark hair. In the sterile, quiet hospital room, holding his daughter for the first time, Ethan finally broke. The tears he shed were not of self-pity, but of a profound, irreversible loss. He had not only lost his wife, he had lost the right to be the man he should have been for this tiny, perfect human being. Amelia did not take him back. Forgiveness, she realized, was not the same as reconciliation. She could forgive his weakness, his foolishness, but she could not forget the coldness with which he had cast her out, the cruelty he had permitted. The trust, once incinerated, could not be regrown. With Alistair Blackwood's guidance and financial backing, Amelia did something she had never imagined. She didn't retreat from the world. She stepped into it. She established the Lily Foundation, a charitable organization dedicated to providing legal and psychological support for women who were victims of domestic gaslighting and emotional abuse. Her story, which she eventually shared on her own terms, became a beacon of hope for countless women who had been made to feel crazy and powerless. She moved out of the city, buying a beautiful home in the countryside, a place with a garden where Lily could run and play. It was a life built not on the glittering, hollow promises of a penthouse skyline, but on the solid ground of her own strength and purpose. Ethan began the long, arduous process of rebuilding himself. Under Alistair's watchful eye, he stabilized Sterling Vance and purged it of anyone who had been complicit in Isabella's rise. He saw his daughter every weekend. He was a doting, attentive father, and Amelia ensured their relationship was a healthy one. He was earning his place in Lily's life one Saturday afternoon, in the park at a time. Perhaps one day he would earn Amelia's friendship, but both knew the romance was a chapter that was closed forever. One sunny afternoon, as Amelia sat on a blanket watching a 2-year-old Lily chase butterflies in their garden, Alistair came to visit. He looked at the scene, a picture of peace and resilience, and smiled. "Robert always said you were made of something stronger than the rest of us," he said, sitting down beside her. Amelia watched her daughter, a symbol of a new beginning, a life that had blossomed from the ashes of a great betrayal. "He was wrong," she replied, a gentle smile on her face. "I wasn't born strong. I was made strong. I had to build a new foundation, one that no one could ever shake." And in the quiet peace of her own garden, surrounded by love that was real and a life that was truly hers, Amelia knew she was finally home. 4 years had passed. The sharp edges of betrayal had softened into a scar, a permanent reminder of a past life, but no longer an open wound. Amelia's world was now painted in the vibrant colors of childhood. It was the bright yellow of the sunflowers that towered over her daughter in the garden, the blue of the summer sky above their country home, and the kaleidoscope of emotions that came with raising a bright, inquisitive little girl. Lily was the center of her universe, a universe Amelia had painstakingly built on a foundation of peace, integrity, and unconditional love. The co-parenting relationship with Ethan had evolved into something surprisingly steady. The fire of their past romance was long extinguished, but in its place was the warm, respectful glow of a shared purpose. He was a constant, devoted presence in Lily's life. He had spent the years not just rebuilding his company, but rebuilding himself. He went to therapy, owned his mistakes with a humility Amelia never thought possible, and treated her with a deferential respect that bordered on reverence. He knew the gift he had been given, not a second chance with her, but the chance to be a father to their daughter, and he never ever took it for granted. Today was Lily's 4th birthday. The garden was filled with the laughter of small children, the scent of cut grass, and the sweet promise of cake. Amelia, dressed in a simple linen sundress, watched as Ethan's sleeves rolled up, knelt to Lily's level, helping her unwrap a ridiculously large present. He caught Amelia's eye over their daughter's head and gave her a small, genuine smile, a smile of shared joy free from the ghosts of their past. For a fleeting moment, it felt perfect. But echoes have a way of returning when you least expect them. The first tremor came a week later, not as a dramatic confrontation, but as a sterile, cream-colored envelope delivered by a courier. It was from a law firm Amelia didn't recognize. Inside, the language was dense and legalese, but the intent was as clear and venomous as a snake's bite. Isabella Rossi, from the confines of a federal prison, was filing a civil suit against the Vance estate, Alistair Blackwood, and Amelia personally. The grounds were defamation, emotional distress, and a new monstrous allegation. The lawsuit claimed that Isabella's character had been assassinated and that crucial personal information had been omitted from the tribunal that had exposed her. Attached was a sworn affidavit from a former disgruntled Sterling Vance employee, a man fired for embezzlement a year prior, claiming he had knowledge of Amelia having a close personal relationship with another man during the final months of her marriage. The suit didn't dare to question Lily's paternity directly. That would be too easy to disprove with a DNA test. Instead, it did something far more insidious. It aimed to rewrite history. It was a calculated attempt to muddy the waters, to paint Amelia not as the victim, but as a fellow adulterer, thereby mitigating Isabella's own crimes in the court of public opinion. It was a desperate, spiteful lashing out from a caged animal designed not to win, but to wound. Amelia's first call was to Alistair. His reaction was swift and dismissive. "Trash, Amelia. A nuisance suit. We will have it thrown out before it ever sees a courtroom. Do not give it a moment of your thought." But her second call was to Ethan, a call she made with a knot of old fear tightening in her stomach. She needed to tell him before the tabloids inevitably got wind of it. She read him the core of the allegation over the phone, her voice tight but controlled. There was a long silence on the other end. For a terrifying second, the new foundation of trust she had built with him felt like it was turning to sand. The old Ethan, the weak, suggestible man from her past, would have allowed a sliver of doubt to creep in. But it was a new Ethan who answered. His voice, when it came, was not filled with suspicion, but with a cold, quiet rage she hadn't heard in years. "She's trying to poison us again," he said, the words clipped and sharp. "She can't stand that we're happy that Lily is happy. She wants to burn down the life you've built." He took a deep breath. "I'm on my way. We will handle this together. Her lawyers, my lawyers, a united front. This time, there is no wedge to drive between us. There is only granite." When he arrived an hour later, the look on his face was one of grim determination. They sat in Amelia's sunlit kitchen, the same room where she had hosted Lily's birthday party just days before, and mapped out a strategy with Alistair on speakerphone. David Hayes was immediately brought back on retainer. Within 48 hours, he had completely dismantled the evidence. The disgruntled ex-employee confessed he'd been paid $10,000 wired from an account belonging to Isabella's sister in exchange for his false testimony. The story was a complete fabrication, but they all knew that in the modern world, the truth often runs a distant second to a sensational headline. And just as they feared, a notorious online gossip portal broke the story, splashing a flattering picture of Isabella next to a grainy, out-of-context photo of Amelia talking to a male parent at Lily's preschool. The headline was sleazy and designed for maximum damage. "Vance Empire Scandal. Jailed mistress claims wife had her own secrets." The echo of the old nightmare was deafening. The feeling of being watched, judged, and publicly dissected returned with a vengeance. But this time Amelia was not alone. "I'm going to fix this," Ethan declared, his jaw set. "Alistair's lawyers will kill the lawsuit in court, but I'm going to kill the narrative in public, right now." His own PR team advised against it. They urged a quiet, no-comment approach to let the legal process play out. "Don't give her the oxygen of a response," they counseled. "You don't understand," Ethan told them, his voice ringing with conviction. "My silence 4 years ago is what allowed this to happen in the first place. My silence was my complicity. Not again. Never again." He booked a single exclusive interview with a respected journalist, a woman known for her tough but fair approach. He didn't bring a lawyer or a publicist into the room with him. He brought only a framed photo of Lily, which he placed on the table next to him. The interview was a masterclass in accountability. He began by refusing to even name Isabella. "I will not give a convicted felon the satisfaction of hearing her name on this program," he stated. "This is not about her. This is about my failures and the strength of the woman I wronged." He then proceeded to publicly own his past with brutal honesty. He spoke about his own insecurities, his ego, and his catastrophic failure to trust the woman he loved. "I was manipulated," he said, looking directly into the camera. "Not because she was a mastermind, but because I was a willing fool. I chose to believe a fantasy because it fed my vanity, and in doing so I betrayed a reality that was 1,000 times better. I failed as a husband, and I am spending the rest of my life trying to succeed as a father and a friend." He then addressed the new allegations. "This latest attack is not just false, it is a calculated act of cruelty aimed at the one person who has shown nothing but grace and integrity, my daughter's mother. It is an attempt to inflict pain on a good woman and to cast a shadow on an innocent child. Let me be unequivocally clear. Amelia Vance is the finest human being I have ever known. Her only secret is a capacity for forgiveness that I will never fully comprehend nor deserve. We are united in protecting our daughter from these lies, and we will not be broken. The interview was a bombshell. It went viral not for the scandal, but for Ethan's raw, unvarnished confession and his passionate defense of Amelia. He hadn't just denied a rumor. He had reclaimed the entire narrative. He had used his platform not to save himself, but to shield his family. Within a week, facing public ridicule and a countersuit for malicious prosecution, Isabella's civil case was withdrawn. The gossip portal printed a full retraction. The echo faded, finally silenced. That weekend, Ethan was at Amelia's home, helping her plant a small vegetable patch with Lily. As their daughter happily dug in the dirt, Amelia turned to him. "Thank you, Ethan," she said, her voice quiet. "What you did, that was the man I thought I married." He looked away towards the horizon, a flicker of the old pain in his eyes. "That man didn't exist then, Amelia. I was an idea you fell in love with. I've spent 4 years trying to actually become him." He finally met her gaze, and his eyes were clear. "Protecting you and Lily isn't a choice anymore. It's my foundation." She nodded, a gentle acceptance passing between them. The scar of their past would always be there, a part of their story. But they had finally learned how to build around it together. The new foundation was solid, tested by the echoes of the past, and it would not be shaken again. Amelia's story is a harrowing reminder that the most dangerous threats often come disguised as love and friendship. She was pushed to the brink, betrayed by the man who should have been her protector, and hunted by an enemy she didn't even know existed. But she didn't just survive. She rose from the ashes, stronger, more purposeful, and in complete control of her own destiny. Her journey from a gilded cage to a life of true freedom shows the incredible power of resilience, the importance of a loyal ally, and the ultimate triumph of truth over deception. Have you ever faced a betrayal that made you question your own reality? What would you have done in Amelia's position? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story of survival and justice moved you, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure you subscribe to our channel for more real-life dramas that will leave you breathless. Thank you for listening.